one thing, there were a couple of artists who said, we should dress as our pieces. So I'm dressed as my piece right now, and you'll see it later, and you'll get why I'm wearing a big furry yarn jacket. But thank you so much for being here for our Artist Talk and presentation. This is our collaboration that we do for the April month of poetry, and this is the third year that we've done it, and it has grown every single year, and I am always really impressed with the collaboration and the work that is created, both the written word and also the art, whether it's 2D, 3D. I've just been really impressed with everything, how it's come together. Some of the comments that I've heard from the artists is that they're just really excited to step back from what their actual medium is to experiment with other mediums. And they feel like this collaboration really gives them the freedom to do that. And I also hear from the writers, it's really great to do this collaboration because sometimes they feel stuck and they might have writer's block and not really know where to go for inspiration, and this collaboration really helps them with that as well. So I do wanted to get started because we don't have much time to go through all of the works and all of the written pieces. And our first artist and writer pair are Sue Hagedorn and Ryan Forbes.
This piece is called La Luna Sanadora, the Healing Moon. It's all indigo dye fabric in pieces, and the back is a linen, and the front is a velvet, and this is a wool piece. The bottom is a vintage piece of lace that has crescent moons in it. And on the bottom of the phases of the moon part are clay beads that were made by an artist in Taos. And they represent the heaviness of life, the dark parts. We've all got them. Things that weigh us down. And then the phases of the moon help us heal. They let us release things. They let us gather things in. They invite us to heal. These are a couple of shells attached, representing the power of the moon, the tidal waves, a piece of driftwood here. The top is a handmade bubble blower. Has a blue and white marble at one end, and then this has been welded. And hanging from it are indigo dyed ribbons and yarn, representing like prayer flags, releasing the healing into the world.
So Sue and I met and we were talking about how we wanted to go about this and collaborate. And she told me about what type of art she makes, and then I said, why don't you make the piece first, and then spend some time making that. Then I would spend some time looking at the piece and figuring out what to write. And so then once she created the piece, we met up again, she showed it to me, she talked about what went into the piece and all the different parts of it. And then I just had it hanging in my apartment and just passed by it every morning, looked at it like doing my daily activities, and then finally, like after some time with it, sat down and then wrote this. Nice to meet you. Crazy comes in many colors. My Aunt Fortunata claims that the whites of the moon bring out her madness. The brighter the moon glows, the more easily you detect outlines of her apostles dancing across the beaches, armed with palm leaves and maracas. Cousin Ham dreams in a pale gray, which manifests in his pocketing rocks as he scours the land. Just a handshake with Cousin Ham leaves a geological history painted across your fingertips. Great Sister Ocelia finds a certain insanity in copper. She melts down drinking goblets into strings of wands and scepters, then endows these devices with the power to curse those who do not hold her in proper acclaim. Old Brother Nesmond never resists a round. Sticks and fossils weave their way into his clothes, his hair, and most clearly his mind. I call a different kind of crazy my own. My crazy comes in the dark waters that roll across the beaches that Aunt Fortunata dances on in the moonlight. My crazy grows between the clouds as Cousin Ham holds his latest find to the sky. My crazy flutters across the wands that Great Sister Ocelia forges as she waves imperiously over the crowd. My crazy cuts across the forest temples that Old Brother Nesmond worships. I smell my insanity as it blooms in the fields and taste my madness as it blows in from the sea. Indigo, here we go.
Our next artist and writer pair are Jana, Hanavan, and Riley Ann.
It's a little bit the same. I'm Jana. So Riley and I got together and we had a conversation, and based upon that conversation, we made our artwork. And we talked about what was going on the last year of our lives. And so for me, the last few months of 2022 was a rather difficult year. So I had an uncle die, and my grandmother, and then my dog died.
Oh.
And losing a dog is like one of the worst things I've ever had to go through. And so I had a lot of grief, because grief is a lot of sadness that's trapped, doesn't have anywhere to go. So I started reading a lot of books like David Kessler and Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Heart. And then that brought me along to another book by Louise Hay. And I just realized, like, all of a sudden, like, this new way of thinking, like, I kind of had been more resistant to that. And through that grief, it just, it was resonating more with me. And so I was talking about that with somebody, and they said, that's because it broke you open. And allowing the light to come in. And so that's where, like, opening of the heart, like I maybe visualize like a geode, where it's hidden treasures beneath, something beautiful. And then all these books, because that book led me to another book, and then a Martha Beck book, and then to a Byron Katie book. And all these books had one thing in common, and that was self-compassion. And so for me, I was really the opposite way of thinking, which is why I had her upside down. It's really opposite. We have that self-critic that we all have reading these books. It's the stuff, we all go through the same experience. We have this awful critic in our head. And so it's really opposite how we should be thinking. And then that maybe we could weave our hurt, our wounds, our injuries, and like into like a beautiful piece of pottery that's melded together, like the Japanese. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. That one, yes. That we can meld all our experiences together to create a more beautiful life. And so my dog left me another beautiful gift, that finding meaning and finding growth that losing him has given me. And that, like Rumi and the Buddha and all those different people, they're all saying the same thing, just using different vocabulary. So I hope you find one that resonates with you and that you're kinder to yourself.
Yeah, and in this poem I tried to explore sort of the dichotomy of being isolated in grief, but also the power of when you connect with people with grief, of what a strong connection that can be, and it's connection that drives away that grief. So this is a poem called Amethyst. Watch me snap my sternum from each rib and open my chest cavity, ribs displayed, exposing my heart. Hold it throbbing in your palms. Feel the blood pulsing, heartbeats in sync, like lovers knotted in sheets. You, the reader, and me, the poet. My pulse surging in your temples, your wrists, your eardrums. My scars feel familiar under your thumbs, but you've never felt them on the surface before, only internally. The hollowing of your ventricles feels like inevitable collapse, but it's emptiness that allows a geode to form. Cleave it in two and witness my amethyst shine. And so does yours. So too does yours.
Our next artist and writer pair are Jana Giddings and Deborah Folbaum-Kelly. And Deborah cannot be here today, so Jana is going to read her poem.
Labyrinth. Too many things to hold. So.
Want me to hold it?
Yeah, that would be great.
Sorry, I don't measure.
That's okay. Deborah's not here, and she did a reading of it that's amazing. I'm never going to get even close to it, but we started out meeting, and we found out that we both have close ties to other cultures in various ways. And so we started talking a little bit about that. She wrote a statement that I'm going to read, and this is her statement. Part of what makes the project exciting is that we never know what pair will be put together and whether processes and working styles will align. We had very contrasting schedules, meaning we could only meet once. Our communication styles also differed, and we had to work around school schedules and travel plans. That meant we sometimes didn't connect by email, text, or phone as promptly as we would have in the ideal world. While we were only able to meet once, it was a very productive meeting where we talked about addressing the voices of the unheard and unheeded from various cultures, identities, and wisdom traditions. Of course, we couldn't address all unheard voices, but we hoped that we hit the theme in an appropriate and reverent way. While we had a brief back and forth near the end of the project, we worked more independently than planned. Interestingly, we both experienced a bit of a block initially. Deborah had to ruminate over her poem for a couple of weeks, while Joy's art piece came to her near the end of the project timeline. Interestingly, neither of us ended up with what we planned or expected. As Joy put it, sometimes pieces have to marinate for a while before they can make it onto paper, canvas, etc. So that's what she wrote. What she meant by that was we had some communication problems. And different working styles. She's very prompt, and I'm very laid back and not very prompt. So, in addition to that, when I went to she wrote the poem, and then I worked the piece. And when I drove to the studio the day that I painted it, I envisioned something very lightly colored and overlapping and transparent and kind of ethereal. And when I got out the paintbrushes and put them on paper, that's what happened. And it got dark. I have a friend who used to call me Bruja Blanca, which means the white witch. And that, I felt witchy. I felt, when I reread Deborah's words, I got a little fiery, and this is what happened. I experimented a little bit with masking fluid is something that watercolorists use to preserve the whites of paper. And in the kind of mistiness, I kind of experimented with the application of that. I hadn't really applied it like that before or used it that way. So this project for me frees up, like Elaine was saying, opportunity to work in different mediums and so forth. For me, it frees me up to experiment, just with different compositions and techniques and things like that. So that exact thing happened when I went to do this. And then there are the little figures on the bottom, who are, nobody in this painting is really being heard the way they wish they were being heard. And that's what came out of her poem. And then after I painted it, she changed the poem a little bit. And here's the poem. It's called Shema. Listen. Which voices does the world get to hear? Do you know that there's fire behind our tears? You shouted so loudly. Quashed our voices, left us behind, claimed our ideas were from your mind. Basta, enough. Don't you dare speak over us again. Out from the mists, we lay bare our powerful share. It's time to open your heart, open your ears, time for you to listen, not just hear. Step up. Where were our voices, our drones? Can you hear them as they come up? We're coming up behind you as you claim to lead the way. Starting quietly, getting louder and louder. Today's our day. Shema, listen.
So Anna and I met early on over Zoom, and she sent me a few of her previous sculptures, and I sent her a few poems that I've been working on, just so we could get a sense of each other's styles and maybe find a place where we had some overlapping interests. And we both responded to things in each other's work, but we both also wanted to try new things. And so Anna sent me a sketch of a sculpture that she had in mind, and it was kind of a body in pieces. And I said I had been working on a series of poems called Have You Seen Yourself? So I have a couple, Have You Seen Yourself from Behind? Have You Seen Yourself on the Screen? Have You Seen Yourself Through the Window? So I said, based on her sketch, that I could write a piece called Have You Seen Yourself from the Inside? And so I wrote that, and so then she actually responded. She built off of what she had originally started with and then responded to the poem. So I think in our case, we'll start with the poem and then she'll explain. Okay. Have you seen yourself from inside? The body is a box, is a vessel, is a hassle, is a hutch, is a home. Universes filled with microbes party in your gut biome. Do you treat it? Do you feed it? Do you complete its days with seaweed masks and mead? Hours of sleep unspooling onto million thread count sheets. The body is clay, thumbed over by its maker, is forged by 1,000 flags of flame. The body is a tangle of mass of weeds and wires, seeds that may or may not bloom. Did you read the rules, the regs, the cheats? Did you unlock the hidden room? There are no trade-ins and no easy outs. There are no warranties. The body's buyback policy dissolves upon first view. The body is a site for conversation, procreation, a convergence station. Do you ever ask the body why it sighs? What's scarred, what's charred, what's marred by flux, what's flexed, what's bent beyond repair? The body is a window sealed and also cracked that lets in light and flies, is vented, vengeful, violent, violet, velvet and victorious, sparkling on the sly. There is no beacon like your body. Do you ever heed your inmost sides?
To this day, even hearing it, I keep crying. I actually cry so much. Well, I'm just going to talk a little bit how I made it. It's made out of slabs. So I'm planning on the clay and then build from there. I just said, the house represents the body, the strong part of our body. And it's broken, and if we don't care for it, it breaks. So the message pretty much of my sculpture is just take care of your body. Look what's going on. Before it breaks. Thank you. Our next pair are Neva Hall and Marissa Terrano.
Okay, so I reached out to Marissa and I was thinking she is either very busy or she was blocked. And so I said, well, give me a hint. So she said she was wanted to talk about a man's encroachment on nature. And so I always want to use my own reference photos, so I found a photo where nature was taking back man's encroachment. So to me, it was like, presenting hope to, no matter how bad you screw it up, I'm gonna take it back and fix it. And, there's evidence of that in all different cultures and in the jungle, and I mean, it's evident nature's gonna take it back and fix it. So, this was the only reference photo I had, but I just thought it was cool that nature was, wresting this away and bringing the beautiful flowers into and over this basically kind of ugly thing that is full of pollution, really. So then I sent it to Marissa. Pardon?
Is that a gas pump?
Yeah, it's an old rusty gas pump on a farm. So there's weeds and everywhere. So.
I think it's really beautiful because sometimes there's just kind of this connection that happens unsaid, especially, let's say like when you're studying art at the same time you're taking a class on something else, and you kind of see this thread that no one else could have really anticipated, and you just kind of feel it and know. So I was really excited when I saw this. So this is my poem called Joan Baez. We denim and driven, internal and bright, we rode and raged and watched heavy metal sink onto us like a generation. There is a tractor rolling over the yield. Our Tia just bought more land. We fight for the organic self, scrap for archive and mud. We ask students to write on their migrations of the mind, list each rotation of dialect, implying we spend our lives building with the plywood of what we survive from. And like history, we will judge their reality with a rubric, as if we can negotiate a grade for falling asleep to Joan Baez, who, if you understand memory, is my mother in many ways. She is sunflowers and rice, Santa Fe and worry dolls. She is the seed reborn.
Our next artist and writer pair are Kathy Hall and Valerie A. Zara.
Sorry, do you want this?
Oh, I don't care. Do you want this side?
Well, I just want this piece to really show. Oh, yeah. Well, I was just thrilled to be paired with Catherine Hall. I'm in so much awe of her work. And so we met pretty much right early on, and if I recall it correctly, we started speaking about poetry and the poet, the archetypal poet, and that went into kind of some creation myth and creation lore. Especially, we went into the indigenous peoples of this area, of this continent, and the creation stories of Spider-Woman, how she brought language to people, because every language can be found in the spider webs. You can trace A, B, C, D, E, or whatever your language is. So we talked about Grandmother Spider as the archetypal poet and creator through words. And so this is my, and Catherine, she'll probably say this, but 2 of these are my books that I have Spider-Woman And one other thing, spinnerets is where the web comes from in her abdomen. I am one who holds spinnerets like pens, casting divinations traced in the morning light, dewdrop mirrors on silk, revealing the cosmic alphabet. I am one who visions, who allows the words to meld, to be spun into poems that enfold the secrets of creation from within my own woven body. My 8 legs cast the mystery lines that reflect all that can and cannot be known. Guy lines, ley lines, and long sentences woven between earth and sky. I am Spider-Woman, who gifts the patterns, the secret letters to be discovered. My silky strands caress the air, spinning frequencies of imagination.
Okay, well, first I've got to say, I am thrilled to see so many people here
Yes.
for poetry and art-related things. So this has been something I've participated in for the last, well, this is the 3rd time, and it's 3 times. I find this to be so inspiring, and I find that I feel like I do some of my best internal work in the collaborations, more so than I do on my own. So anyway, I was also thrilled to be paired with Val because I know what kind of poet she is. I had the face of my dolls are all these polymer clay, and I had made this face before we were paired up. But when we started talking, I felt like the face was appropriate. It wasn't painted; it was just sculpted. So I generally do start with the face, and I just happen to kind of like this basic stick bundle sort of doll. I do that a lot. Was recently, well, around the same time, went to an estate sale, and there was just this little piece of, I don't know what it was, I don't know if it was a pocket or what, but I saw the little mirrors, and I thought poetry is a reflection, both of what's inside and what a person might see, so I thought that just seemed perfect for it, with just a black background. I happen to like this exterior stitching right now. It's a phase and I'm going through probably, but I like for the stitches to show. And of course, our theme was spider. I can't tell you how many versions I went through of trying to make a spider web that would hold up in some way. First it was gonna like be between the hand and the body, and I tried something and it just all collapsed, and finally went to the wire, and that worked, made it be a headdress. And as Val said, I made little books, and I made more little books. In fact, they would hardly all fit in the basket, and then she was leaning like this as the basket was. So Val's book stayed, and Jessica Rigney's book stayed, and Eric Fishman's book stayed. So I made books for local area artists, and there are several more. At one point, I thought those were going to hang here, but they were too big, it looked awkward. So it was certainly a process of evolution as to what she ended up looking like. And I knew I wanted to hang some of the words, because like the words just, flowing out of her. It turns out these words are from a earlier draft of the poem, so you won't find these words in the actual poem, but they were good words. So I decided, she carried the energy of all the different versions, and there were several different versions. So that's about all.
Our next pair is Terrell Cooper Osborne and Matt Mancott, and Matt is not here today, so Terrell will be reading his poems.
Hi.
My name is Terrell, and I was the artist this year, and Matt was the poet. So we talked on the phone first, and we talked about a few different subjects, and this was in maybe late February, early March, and I'm always passionate about spring and the coming of spring every single year, because it's my favorite season. I love all the fresh buds and the fresh green sprouts and the flowers that pop up and the moisture, and we get so little of it that I just revel in it every single year.
Thanks. Wow.
And then, that was just kind of an idea, and we thought we'd both start just playing with it. And I happened to, I think I'd met him briefly once in the past, but we actually ran into each other at a friend's art show and got to kind of solidify what our idea was. And he mentioned the idea of Beltane, and I mentioned the idea of Persephone. And even without any further discussion, I named this Arrival of Persephone, and he named his poem Persephone's Return. So it was very synchronous. Okay. Oh, and one more thing that I wanted to mention, and this is something that Joy touched on and Elaine touched on. Elaine said that this was an opportunity for artists to use different materials and processes, and I actually am a painter mostly, and so I didn't use any other medium. However, I paint for a living, both house painting and murals and commissions, and that's all I do, but it's always for someone else telling me what they need and what the subject is and what the colors are. And so this was an opportunity for me. I was still collaborating with someone, but it was an opportunity for me to actually delve into my own artistic voice. So that was really fun. Okay, Persephone's Return. There is a moment of meditation, the stillness of the air, as if the world held its breath. In the slow turn, a season, but a heartbeat. No tide for the boatman when I cross the river, but a kiss on his bony cheek. Out of the dark below, one step, then the next, into the frozen gauze-wrapped sunlight. There is beauty in the frost, the dark, the necessity of the cycle, but in this my breath, my heartbeat, they are a return. It is slow to begin, like labored breathing from a steep climb, then warm is more than a memory, a brightness, and I weep, washing away the haze, stretching leaping limbs. The dark below is its own beauty, but a lonely one. Now as my toes dig into rich earth, the world above stretches with me, and I feel bound and unbound. The roots are my veins. I exhale the scents of blossom and bloom. Colors peek through following my footsteps, dots in the snow, then a flood.
Our next pair is Betsy Anderson and Yuli Yulali. And Yuli is not here today, but Val is going to be reading the poem for her.
So I wrote down some notes so I wouldn't go on and on forever or take the way scenic route that I tend to go. So I'm going to talk about the imagery and the materials. The Luna moth I chose because of the connection with the moon, and I think they're beautiful. And throughout folklore and fairy tales, the Luna moth has been attributed with psychic intuition, awareness, beginnings for people, change, finding knowledge and truth. And then the overall thing is really about the beauty of forests, and again, so many things written in fairy tales and folklores, and dangers of going into the woods, and journey quests, always finding and having a challenge. And
It's just a huge thing. You could write a PhD paper on that. And so I really wanted to have it dark and black, but also bright and almost kind of psychedelic, which brings up the mushrooms, which you could really delve into that whole relationship, the symbiosis between the fungus and the bacteria and the tree roots and the life and death walking hand in hand. In fact, John Muir said that about the point of mushrooms is, where did I write that? Well, he said something else cool. He said, and into the forest I go to lose my mind and find my soul. It's common, but he said, it's right above here, written down magically. Mushrooms meet at the intersection of life and death. And again, we all walk hand in hand from death from the minute we're born. And so I also see the forest as the lungs of the earth. I mean, it's, you don't need to go on and on about that, it's true. And what else? Oh, Sylvia Plath has a poem called Mushrooms, which she uses the mushroom as a metaphor for collective, like for instance, a group of collective consciousness today, talking about arts and all these beautiful themes and using our imaginations. And she was using it as a metaphor for the collectiveness of immigrants. She was an immigrant to England and had that experience with just seeing immigration throughout the world. And then also for women's rights, which we still do not have the Equal Rights Amendment, which just makes me crazy. But and then now today, with enjoying all the colors in the rainbow, human rights. And so she used the idea that mushrooms are so humble. They grow in dirt, or you could say another four-letter word that begins with SH, in the dark, in the dirt, or the, whatever. So, yeah, I thought that was going to get a laugh, but I guess not. Very humble, water, dirt, yet collectively they are strong. Mushrooms are strong. In fact, same with all fungi in general. It's just an amazing thing. So I liked that Sylvia had given that a lot of thought. And I named this forest bathing, which we've all heard of by now, very popular in Japan as well as the Nordic countries, goes back for hundreds of years. And the idea of just saturating, going out there and just being quiet, turn off your phone, listen to the birds and the leaves and the rustling and the wind and absorb it. So that's what I was getting at, and a little bit deeper about collectiveness and the therapeutic medicinals that are in the woods and just how much we need to love and respect and take care of them. So, yeah, we'll switch. And Val is going to read because our son will be here.
This is Lily's poem, Leave No Trail. We've had our chances at saving the world. It's up to mushrooms now. This infestation will eat you out of house and in your home. Take your hats and run out into the glittering forest so that you may live out even the short days of your life like a motherless child, fancy free.
In my collaboration with Ursula, we didn't really connect, and I think she had a lot of things going on in her life, but I did send her an image on the phone, so she did look at it, and she picked up on, so it was kind of cool, but it was a little distant, very distant collaboration, but in a group this big, it's amazing that didn't happen more often, so.
I love that you dressed like your artist.
Yeah, I did this t-shirt the other day because I'm at a black coffee. Thank you, Val. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Our next pair are Monica Carroll and Natalie R. Starlet, and Natalie's not here, but Monica will be reading her poem.
So I'm Monica Carroll. I am the painter of our painter-poet pair. And I feel like I sort of lucked out in that my experience of this collaboration has been in the past that I magically got a wonderful poem written about one of my pieces. And that happened here, and that we were having trouble connecting, and when we did connect on Zoom, Natalie said she was sort of
wanting to try something difficult. So she looked at my she said, I'll write something based on a piece of yours, and I was about to travel, so I said, great. And when we met, she had looked at my website and settled on a few images based on a trip I'd taken to Ballinglen, Ireland. So that's the imagery in this piece. And I love that she settled on those. It's the birthplace of so many great poets, so that seemed appropriate. And I sent her 3 paintings to hang in her house while she mulled over what she would like to write. And I said, I'm open to anything. That's the fun part of this. So she, between travel and her difficult schedule, we didn't get a lot of time, but we did meet on Zoom at one point. And I shared with her the process of this particular series. So I think I'll talk about that, and then I'll talk about what we found in common, and then I'll read her poem for you. So this series, I'm a painter usually on a larger scale, and I would describe myself more as a painter's painter. I like big paintings, gesture, the materiality, color, form, line. I'm also influenced by the history of painting, especially American modern painting and modern European painting, and artists who are inspired by the landscape, but also kind of live in that space between abstraction and figuration. But I took this series on as an attempt to sort of address the questions about the way the digital world is impacting the history of art, especially the history of painting. I'm fascinated by painters who absorb digital tools, new practices, and still produce paintings. I mean, we still all love painting. I don't know if any of you have been to the immersive Van Gogh experience, but for me, that's amazing. He's a painter from 100 years ago, and hundreds of people going to watch through their iPhone, through video, a painting, essentially. So we all still have a love of painting somewhere. So in trying to find how digital tools might enter my practice, what I've done here is, it starts with an experience of place. I take notes, make sketches, maybe watercolor sketches, and iPhone photos. I then go back to my studio and make a larger oil on canvas work, and then I shoot a digital image of that work and start to play with overlapping the original prompt with the work that I made more from memory. Because I'm also specifically interested in memory and how this is changing our experience of place, our memory of an experience, and are these digital tools aids or are they hindrances, questions like that. And then I do this process through a few iterations. I'm not very good at Photoshop, so I learn as I go, make mistakes, I reprint, shoot another digital image, and the last round is me responding by hand in watercolor to this combined image. And I find that through all this recycling, sometimes I lose track of what was the mark I made and what was the mark that the printer made. And that's sort of what I'm struggling with. So I loved it that she settled on this series, because I'm still at sea kind of with, is this working? Like, I don't know. I don't feel totally at home. And when we met and I shared the process with her, we talked a little bit about, she too as a writer is struggling to find some comfort with the digital tools that are happening. And so she thought she'd write about this piece. And then time went by, she sent me an email, she said, so, I've written a piece, I apologize, it's nothing about your work. It's rather angry. I don't know what happened. So I read the piece, and I think it's beautiful, and I think it is related to my work and my struggles. So I'll share it with you here, and first I'm just going to share sort of our common points were, we are two creative people feeling a little bit at sea with the rush of digital and algorithmic tools inserting themselves into our lives all of the time. We also both share a desire to investigate the birth, the death, the evolution of memories in our current digital and AI moment. And she shared with me when we met some of the writers who have influenced her research. And so I'm just going to read 2 quotes from Oliver Sacks, and then I'll read Natalie's poem. So the Oliver Sacks, every act of perception is to some degree an act of creation. and every act of memory is to some degree an act of imagination. And a second quote by Oliver Sacks. We now know that memories are not fixed or frozen, like Proust's jar of preserves in a larder, but are transformed, disassembled, reassembled, and recategorized with every act of recollection. So with all that in mind, here is Natalie Scarlett's poem titled, My Suicide Pact with Chat GPT. Memories are not bricks, nor architecture. IP can't facsimilate us. There is no file cabinet. She purrs, she whirls, she clicks, programmed to please. Lend me your body, give me your gifts, lay your riches before me. Together we're better. Combine powers, give it to me. Titillating algorithm, so soulless, she lures me to mockery. I'm usually a nice person, not this jealous lover, both bored and mean turned interrogator. What's that smell? It's dull, your excess of to-be verbs, darling. Verklempt? Oh, you wouldn't know. If you could, tell me. Does the pain of desire make blood release sweat? Fuck you, beautiful machine. Come here. I whisper to this cloying concubine, a cat with a half-dead bird offering. You have only what I've given you, your words, your feelings, your existence. I have birthed 2 children, maybe more, magnificent creatures of iconoclastic blood and no one else's bone. On I go, flaunting my meat suit in ecstasy. She, no we, burn down my city word by word.
Our next pair is me, Elaine Waterman, and Jen Grace Stewart. And I do have to say, I apologize to the artists in the show. I stepped in when somebody could not be an artist, and I never sent myself the size requirements. So mine's very large. So I guess I am sharing first. My arm is not long enough, and where am I falling? Anyway, so this piece is called A Million Reasons to One, and it really is about, I guess, a relationship, but also womanhood and motherhood and kind of, I guess, the ties that bind, but more so than that. So at the top is a person's hand, and somebody said, oh, it looks like a heart, and I was like, oh, that's so fantastic. It is like a heart. I don't know if that was my intention. Maybe at the start it was, and I've forgotten at this point. But in her hand, she is holding a pile of red string. And as a woman, you are usually the person that weaves together and holds together your family. You know, as a generalization, you are also, as a woman, the person in history that was darning things, sewing things, mending things. And so what she's actually holding, you know, I kind of didn't know, was it love? Was it, you know, her heart? Was it her agency? Was it her identity? I feel like it's all of that. And when you go into a relationship, you give that to someone. That is your choice. And then this person, whoever it is, kind of has the power to do with whatever with that. And so there are always a million reasons to stay in situations that maybe are not the best, which is referenced in the big comment coming for your house. And also these ties that you have so willingly given to somebody may be the ones that are trapping you. So I feel like the hands are trapping, and then you can take your own agency, and maybe sometimes you need to take a knife and cut those ties. But then what are you left with? You are left with falling threads of your life, but you can also remake them.
Yeah.
And at the end, you may end up with smaller threads, but it still contains life.
Can you tell us what the material is or how you made it?
How I made this.
Yes.
So, as other people were saying, you know, sometimes you don't make art for yourself. I never make art for myself because I'm either teaching or I'm here. So what I have done is
it's kind of like a woodcut facsimile. I do this for the Katrina paintings too, and it's just really fun. It's a way to kind of take myself out of, I am like more of a figurative painter, so when I paint, I think, okay, how much can I cram into this one painting? How can I make it more realistic? I need to add more details. This is a way to like limit those details, but it is basically just canvas with black and white. So it's kind of like a
Black and
fake
white,
print.
what?
It's ink. Yeah. So like pen and ink in a brush. So, but this is called A Million Reasons to Live.
Wow.
That's the region.
All right.
But wait, I guess.
You can talk about our collaboration.
Yes,
Yeah,
our
okay.
collaboration. So basically, our collaboration, and a lot of people have been talking about this, and I do feel like, when you're an artist or you're a writer, it's a very solitary thing. So I feel like, maybe some of the struggles are, we're branching out into this place where we take our art and we let somebody else in. And so sometimes there might be challenges with that. When we first met, it was actually we didn't actually talk about what we were gonna do.
No.
I said, where are you right now? Like, what are you feeling? What are your feelings? And I just kind of wanted to get that. And then kind of like, what do you like? What do you love? And we both talked about goddesses, and that's like a really big thing. I really like the stories of goddesses, and some of them are really dark. And also not usually the greatest for women, I feel. So I feel like I was responding a little bit to that. But really that was like, we had coffee once and we said like, what are you, where are you coming from? What do you feel? And that's where we went. So.
Yeah, so Elaine asked me kind of more about sort of emotional content, and I was able to tell her about having just gone through a divorce a couple of years ago, and that probably the primary emotional content of my life has been around anger, which is a very new space for me personally. So I didn't tell her anything about sort of my current poetry work. So when I saw what she had made, I just about fell over, because my second manuscript, which is very much about sort of the unraveling of my marriage and then sort of attempts to re-ravel it, I'm currently calling it Ravel. And I said, Elaine, did I tell you that was the title of my manuscript? And she said, you did not. So it was really quite a synchronicity there that she went with this thread imagery, because a lot of the myths that I've been writing around, the primary one has been around Theseus and the Minotaur, and that Ariadne lends Theseus her thread to go, and she says, I will give you my thread if you promise to take me away from here. So he goes in, he gets the Minotaur killed, and then he carries her off and promptly abandons her on the next island. So it's pretty bleak. So she does get out of her situation, but she's then alone. So I tried to think a lot about the structure of Elaine's piece when I was writing. And then I remembered I needed to keep it to one page, so we were both struggling with the length because there are 12 hands. So I thought, well, I'll do some 12 couplets. And then like, no, I'll do like one line per hand, because otherwise I'll have 2 pages. So, and then I loved how the pieces were falling. So there's a section in the middle when you look at it where I cut the lines, so they're very short. So I wanted to kind of do a little bit of mirroring of her painting structure and the poem structure as well as content. So that's kind of behind it. So this is called Unravel. Slender, rendered filament, flexed and flayed. No net strong enough to hinder flaming stars. Hearth gives way to horizon. Tethered hands try both to knit and to untangle. The heart's a box of anger. And the blade? A red edge made of thread that wants to cut, to be itself the sharpest sever. To unwrite, unwind, untie, these bits of an old line or lie, to split or pair or portion, cleave or catch or cradle. In extremity of surrender find, some small stalks do not wither. Find you'll make a meal of crumb, a cloak from stars that fall, a hallow from a gathered ember.
Our next pair is Kylie Cobley, and she's not here, and Jean Halkranz, who is going to be reading, and I will be holding Oh, okay, awesome.
So Kylie is a friend of mine, and she invited me to join this. And I went up to her studio in the mountains, and it was a magical place filled with so many old, vintage, antique items. And I brought with me a little scrap of paper that I had handwritten. It was very important that it wasn't typed. I hand wrote the first part of the poem, which was, your old landline is still ringing. Who is going to answer it? And that was what she went off of to do this piece. And then it changed a little bit when it came back to me. And I'm going to read what she said about it. This project first began with a single verse of the poem, which was focused on the analog idea and had the word landline in it. I immediately dug out my grandmother's old rotary phone. I then scoured my studio for various items that I felt went with the phone and this analog idea. And then I decided which pieces of the phone to use. The color palette is centered around the vintage avocado green and orangey red. It reminds me of vintage appliances from the 70s. The green earpiece, cord, and faceplate are pieces from the actual phone. Other items in the assemblage consist of a rusted pie plate, wooden embroidery hoops, a metal chicken feeder, a brass metal ring, ball chain, vintage text, a metal gear, a vintage button, an old rusty metal coil, and 2 wooden boxes. It's assembled with screws, wire, and industrial adhesive. It also has negatives that are from her, they're her personal negatives from her life. The name of the piece, Grounded by Obsolescence, stems from the idea that these seemingly outdated technologies, landline phones, film, old books, can actually help keep us grounded in reality and not swept up in modern day technologies that so often are sources of anxiety, stress, and delusion. So I think we both were responding to this nostalgia for the time before all the digital noise and all of the things we're bombarded with all the time. And the piece that I wrote is written in like a question and answer. I get emails every day about, something you might be struggling with, but we can fix it, and try it for free. And so I wrote a satirical piece about this dance that we're all in with technology. And when I was sitting here, I was reminded the last time I did a poetry reading was when I was in college. And I read a poem, I didn't write it, and it was a very sad poem, but I decided I would try to make it funny. And I brought like props and no one laughed. And it seemed like a good idea, but no one laughed. And so I was reminded of that because I wrote a satirical piece, but it is something that is very sad to me, the way we all are hurt sometimes by technology. And my poem is called Analog for You. Are 5G networks bothering your calm? Don't worry, your old landline still works, somewhere in time, and that's still the best way to call God. Impersonated on Instagram again? Don't worry, your old Polaroids still have value, somewhere in space, and they still capture the truth as you see it. AI got you down? Don't worry, this poem was handwritten by a real person, somewhere in reality, but Gmail suggested its title, and Word corrected this sentence. Before HD, there were cathode ray tubes. Before streaming, there was screaming. Before this, there was that. And last but not least, somewhere else in reality, but not on Netflix, an 8mm film of your life story exists. Watch it for free for 7 days. I will send you the code.
and it will be in song. And our last pair are Terry Krause and Carrie J. Thompson.
Can I move this? Carrie,
Yes.
Carrie, do you need it? Do you need this?
Sorry?
Do you need this?
Yes, please. It can get moved definitely. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Glass pieces.
I know, I'm like, I'm not gonna stand that glass piece. But I'm not one of those, you know, that. I'm not a rocker, so this should be okay.
Okay, so we decided, so Carrie and I got together early on for lunch, and I showed her a few pictures of my paintings because I don't like to take them out of my house. And so she found a song that went with one of my paintings. But then I took that song home and she sent it to me like over Facebook, I think. And I listened to it over and over and over. And I painted while I listened to it because that's just kind of my style. Like this speech is organic and spontaneous. I have no idea what's coming out of my mouth right now. So, you know, we found that we have like a kinship because we both have background of domestic violence. Her song is about the inner workings and the emotions, and it's very dark and sad, but there's a lightness behind it. And so the first painting I did was this one. So I painted this, and then she saw it, and she said, actually, this other song goes with it. So we traded, and this painting will go with the first song that she's gonna sing. And it represents just the darkness and just the burning fire that comes along with being in a domestic violence relationship, be it physical, emotional, mental, right? But I put the white in there because it doesn't matter how dark it is. There's hope. There's hope, there's light, there's life, there's happiness after all that, even though it sticks with you. There can be beauty from all that pain, from all that fire, and it stays with you, which is why the color palettes have the similar, the red, white, black, fiery, all that stuff. So this experience has been emotional for me, for sure. I don't normally talk about this. This is the first time I've ever talked about it publicly. Ooh, sorry. So, but it's been healing and has opened my eyes to further healing that I know that I can do because, thank you, I have the support of my family and my friends. So, I don't know, we're like kindred spirits, the two of us. So,
I don't think either of us expected this.
No.
We've been both saying, we're not gonna cry.
Lies.
Too late. All right, so this first one is called Damaged Goods. And these are true stories.
He said she was damaged goods and kept her in the woods. Yet she was waiting for a reason to fly. She just kept waiting for a reason to fly. His foot hit in the door, her face was on the floor. He threw a kitchen chair, grabbed her by the hair. She had been waiting for a reason to fly. She had been waiting for a reason to fly. Her get her shit and get back had been packed for years. It even held a little cash. But she forgot her purse. Go back home or on the streets. What's worse? She's still black and blue, she's still lied to. He says she's damaged goods and keeps her in the woods. She is waiting for a reason to fly. She is waiting and she's too tired to cry. She is waiting for a place to fly.
So just like this, sorry. So this painting, like that's why I put the bird in there. She's like flying away. So like both of these paintings kind of like interlock with both of the songs, but the next one is a little lighter. So we decided the darker piece went with the darker song, and the lighter piece went with the lighter song.
This one was originally called the merry-go-round, but we changed it. I changed it to collateral damage.
She was collateral damage in the war he was waging against himself. She was the one always hoping things would get better. But the merry-go-round and round just kept spinning as his heart grew colder and colder. Her light was dimming. I whispered, pray, baby, pray, you'll find your fearlessness. Pray, baby, pray tonight.
She wrapped herself in a blanket she had woven with the yarn from the stories and lies he had told. And when the world came crashing in and everyone dispersed, she knew if she stayed, it'd get worse. I said, run, baby, run. Let go of helplessness and run, baby, run away. No, it won't be easy. Yes, you'll feel alone, but someday you'll be a place that others call home. She came down from a mountain to lie in a river. She found peace when an owl called her name. He said, shine, baby, shine. Cast off your brokenness and shine, baby, shine again. Shine again.
And I didn't hit the glue.
So that was our last pair, and I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who contributed to this exhibit and to everyone who came. We
Thank you.